Manu Meel, BridgeUSA.
So they were thinking about bringing out someone to talk about students, and so they picked a kid from California to come out to 21 degree Fahrenheit weather to talk about this. And I'm supposed to be representing young people, and you know, one of the funny things is all my friends were like, you know, there's gonna be older folks there. You're gonna bring the energy. And I mean, the amount of energy that I've seen from you all in this weather, this is like the equivalent of an away football game for me. I'm like in Lambeau Field right now. So, you know, yesterday I was in Sonora, California. It's this small town in Northern California. Yep, got zero whoops. That's because it's a small town. And, you know, I was with one of my best friends. His family lives out there. And we were celebrating Martin Luther King Day, and their school had a full-on function, and they were discussing, you know, the legacy of Martin Luther King and what's going on today. And they played a speech, his last speech, before he was assassinated the next day. And he ended that speech with a line. It said, and it was about when you're thinking about helping others. And he said, you know, rather than asking what me helping them will do to me, ask yourself, what will happen if I don't help that person? It's this idea, it's a very simplistic line, it sounds really obvious. The idea, though, is that we are all humans in this together that share the American spirit. And what he's getting at is that we've got common purpose. And we've got to use that common purpose to solve the problems that are hurting all of us. But what I see today, and I'm currently a student at UC Berkeley, I'm going to graduate this semester with some of my best friends who helped start BridgeUSA with me. And what we're seeing across the country is a lack of common purpose. We're seeing politics driven by greed, by drive for power, but most, I think, you know, what's the scariest trend is this idea that politics is now being driven by a system of polarization and tribalism, where people seek to find the divisions between us to continue dividing us and to profit off of that as a way to continue holding the office back there. And I think that cycle needs to be broken. And I think the first step to building the civic health of our country, the civic infrastructure, what drives us. You know, we often talk about democracy as something that has legislative reform systems. We talk about democracy as something that has laws. But at the end of the day, the sole unit of democracy is a person. And what are the relationships between people in our country right now? We've got to not only revive empathy, but we have to facilitate constructive engagement. Because the key is that what you have right now is not only a lack of understanding, but you have a lack of humanization. This idea that someone that disagrees with you has invalid experiences. And I come from Berkeley, California. I grew up in Staten Island. I lived in the Bronx for a while. Then I moved up to Boston. I climbed the social ladder because of my family. And I saw the different problems across our society, and I totally understand the impulse that these problems are so goddamn pressing that we have to address them right now. But one other thing that Martin Luther King said, Dr. King said, was that there's a difference between divisive change and unified change. There's progress and change that brings all boats together to make it last more than just one presidential administration and into a progress of history. And then there's that change that gets us a short time win and then gets overturned in the next administration. And what we have to strive for is building the civic infrastructure to create that unified change. So what is BridgeUSA doing? I think what is absolutely critical, and Mike and I talk about this over the phone, and I've gotten mentorship from some of the wonderful speakers here, is that you've got to have young people on the front lines of this. When you look at the Vietnam protests, when you look at the civil rights movement, when you look at the climate change strikes, what is the unifying factor that turned these moments in American history into marks for social progress? It was the addition of strong-willed mentors combined with passionate young folks. The stories, the personal connections, the things that turn these nebulous forces of progress into something tangible. And you've got to have a united, strong, young people constituency that is advocating for this, because they are the people that will inherit tomorrow. You've got to give the voice of leaders of tomorrow a seat at the table today. So how do we achieve that? BridgeUSA, as I said, is building a national student movement. It's focused on four things. Across college campuses, but also beyond campuses, because it's about creating and investing in the next generation. It's about investing in the future of democracy. It's about not waiting for problems to come tomorrow and preempting them, because we can invest in our civic health now. 4 principles. First is we've got to make this movement diverse. I'm not talking about diverse in a conservative sense or a liberal sense. I'm talking about diversity in its core essence. This idea that if you're about fixing democracy that works for everyone, you've got to have every American involved. And if you look at my generation, you know, I was telling Mike this earlier today, I'm 21. And for me, the two administrations that I've seen are the Trump presidency and the Obama administration. And those aren't great sample sizes of an effective democracy. The fact that a broken democracy is the norm for not only my life, but most of my fellow young people, means that you've got to show that it works and you've got to reach out to those people. The second aspect of not only Bridge, but this broader movement, is you've got to invest in tomorrow's leaders. You've got to start not only inculcating this ethic of empathy and engagement. This is not compromise. Again, let me mark a very strong difference. Bridge is not about creating centrists. It's not about compromising your beliefs, but it's about humanizing your beliefs, and it's about recognizing the people behind those beliefs. That is absolutely important, because when the people founded this building, well, they didn't really find this building, they created it. But when they founded the Constitution, it was built on ideas, and ideas that were agreed upon by everyone. The third idea, the third core principle, is that this has to be multi-partisan. This has to exist above partisan politics. This has to reach out to our conservative brothers and sisters in the rural states, and it's got to go to our liberal brothers and sisters in Boston, San Francisco, Orlando. You've got to build a coalition of people, because that's what creates transformative, unified change. And the last thing, and this is the most important, is you can't lose hope. And I'm going to end with a story that ties everything together. About 3-4 months ago, I drove parts of the Midwest, a little bit of the South. I want to do this a lot more extensively into the future. And I'm excited to see what the gyrocopter project turns out to be, because this is sort of similar. But what I did was I drove down and I knocked on a bunch of doors with Confederate flags. In hindsight, it was not a great idea. You know, not passing any judgment, just not a great idea. But it makes for a good story, so listen to it. I knocked on 5-6 Confederate flag doors, a couple in Indiana, went down to Kansas, Oklahoma, and I went in there with the objective of just listening, understanding. Not with camera crews, not with arguing with people, not with telling them that I think they're wrong or that I think that they're offensive or threatening not only my humanity, but threatening the humanities of my fellow American citizens. But purely just there to listen. And I got kicked out a couple times. A couple of places were not interested. But the ones that were brought me inside their home. They cooked me good food. And they just told me that they feel lost. They feel lost and they feel left behind. And no, I know the media talks about this. We've left a lot of the country behind. We've left a lot of politicians behind. But when I was listening to them, they reflected a common human tendency. It's that we want to feel part of something larger than ourselves. And when there's no one else there to fill that void, for not just those people, you go 5 blocks that way. People there feel lost too. They feel left behind. So when there's nothing to fill that void, that's when the insidious forces come in and they fill that void. And what we've got to do, and those people were not only grateful for me just taking my time out to listen to them, they were ready to listen to me, just because I'd made that gesture. We never see instances like that in the news. But I'm telling you, I bet this. And someone told me, when I talked to the DNC about this, I was like, why the hell do you guys have no grassroots marketing ops? I'm almost done, Mike. Why do you not have any grassroots marketing ops in the South? You know, what are you guys doing? Why aren't you reaching out to these people? They said, man, it's going to take a lot of time. Well, I said, I'm 21, I've got a lot of years left, so let me do it. But those people listen to me, and it's possible. So my bet is that people want to empathize, people want to listen, but we've got to elevate that narrative so that we built the constituency for this grassroots movement. I'm not speculating. I'm betting on the American spirit, because the American spirit has withstood the test of time. It's overcome significant adversity, but most importantly, it's always favored the moral arc of unified progress. Thank you so much.
Woo!